We are going to give this another go. Let me see, can I invite you, Brenda? We did it. Brenda, I knew we would do it.
Yeah, there was a second button saying go.
Oh no, now your connection is
Request
gone.
to join. Are we both
Oh,
here?
good. We're both almost here. I knew we'd do it,
Are
though.
you hearing me?
I knew we'd. Yeah. Can you hear me okay now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great, okay.
We're here. Brenda, I knew, because I know when we started to do our online classes, there was a lot of nervousness, and taking art onto technology was something that I know we weren't, especially when we were chatting to you initially, we just weren't sure how it was all going to translate. And I can't believe you're teaching us things now. So I knew if it was ever two women that was going to get an Instagram live going, it was you and me.
I'm live. We've got Zoom pretty much figured out, but Instagram Live is well, we're learning as we go along. So
I know. And as you said, it's not something that we can practice. So here we are, just chatting to everybody. Anyway, Brenda, you've obviously joined us from your studio, which is just an amazing space. I know you've shown me around before, and it's just
see a bit more behind me. I've got a whole wall there. So if something is large, like the ones behind me, I just put them straight on the wall. And I end up on the wall at the same time that I paint the painting, but I'm so lucky to have a big space that I can do that.
And
you were that I do in my classes with the Zoom students, but they end up back here waiting for more attention.
Yeah, you said that. So during your demos with your class, because certainly your pieces look incredible when you're finished even demoing to your students, but you say that you take them back just to give little tweaks to them and take a little time.
Yeah, so I know that I try to make it look like you can do this in 30 minutes, but that's me trying to do it in the time that I've got with my class. But in fact, they always need something, and sometimes I don't know what it is until I'm walking around it here. So they come back here with me, they sit on the wall until I figure out what else it needs, and then I bring it over to the easel and do a bit.
And you were telling me, I mean, we've had such lovely conversations over even the last 6 months. I guess probably I've gotten to know you the most during these past 6 months when I'm more involved in the schoolhouse. But you come across like a very spiritual person. Like any of the stories you've told me about what's gotten you to where you are now, you've gone with your gut and intuition, and that seems to, and that's only just from my perception, but would that be fair to say? Or
yeah, I think that like all my life I've kind of in a way marched to my own drum and got my inspiration or motivation from various sources. Like one of my earliest inspirations was the writer Dervla Murphy, who cycled alone from Ireland to India in 1963, and I read that at 12. And I decided there and then that I would go to the Himalayas. And once I got to into Aer Lingus and I had winter leave, like 3 months off at a time, I got a flight to Delhi and I got a bus to Kathmandu, and I walked the Everest Trail by myself for 2 weeks, and then I did the Annapurna Trail. So things that kind of get hold of me, I usually kind of find a way to stay with it and drive it forward in some way, even if it seems kind of crazy.
no, I think that's what is so attractive about you as well, Brenda, because I know even in your class your classes is one of the most popular classes that we run in the schoolhouse, and you've had a following of people that have followed you from even when you said you were teaching before the schoolhouse was in existence. You were teaching from your kitchen, and some of those people are still learning from you today, years later.
Well, I think too that artists maybe just have a particular bent in their personality that in a way draws us to each other.
It's
That
certainly not a bent. It's certainly not a bad thing. I think it's something that a lot of us would aspire to, because it's not easy to take the more beaten path. You know, it's not necessarily the most conventional decision that you've made over, but it's certainly worked for you. I mean, you seem to love what you do, and you're very passionate about what you do.
I do, like, I'm very lucky because sometimes there are artists who are not teachers and teachers who are not artists.
Hmm.
That I even got an art teacher in my group who taught art for all her professional life and is only now giving herself the time to become an artist in her
Oh,
own,
wow.
and and a very wonderful artist at that. She's just amazing in the beautiful work that she's doing. But the teaching demands of teaching that was full time kind of uh, put a halt to being able to develop professionally at the same time. So I'm lucky in that I'm a full-time artist and a teacher, and I started teaching. I did my HDip to be a teacher in 1975. It goes back a very long time. So I have dual passions, and one is the painting that I do, and the other is teaching, just because I love to find a way to share, whatever I've picked up with people, and to see them develop and to
Hmm.
see them grow into their strongest selves. And I think
Yeah.
that way of growing into meeting yourself and growing into that person and becoming stronger and stronger in what you express and how you do it. So that's just a joy to be part of these journeys with
But
many
I think
people.
that's what you sorry, I interrupted you, but I think that's what you do when you're teaching, is that you somehow help to break through the creative, like the lateral thinking part of the brain, and get people to paint with their emotional side, which isn't always easy. And when you said even about that tutor or the friend of yours who is a teacher, when you have so much practical information about how something can be done, it's probably hard to even bring your own creativity, because it might challenge the sort of, again, the conventional way that something's supposed to be done.
And I think that you have to allow yourself to make a mess and for it to not work at all. And every time I step up to the easel in front of my class, I might look like I'm fully in control of exactly what's going to happen, but I might be kind of shaking a little bit because I can't be sure how anything is going to work out. And I have to trust that whether it works or not, that the exploring of the subject and the engagement with the process of trying it is worth it, whether it works or not.
Yeah.
I think of everything that I want to share with my students. What I most want to share, I think, is to be brave and not to fuss about the outcome, but to engage with the process. And the process teaches you because, like, I've gone painting full time for about 35 years and gone through many stages, not exactly like Picasso, the blue stage and the pink stage, but watercolor flowers stage and a portrait in pastels stage. And now it's been seascapes in oils for about 15 years. But there was a time that I hadn't even done one seascape. But the subject rolled and became something that was just so joyful to express and paint. Where what it was, and what I want everyone to look for, is find the subject where the artist and the subject and the means of expressing it all come together and fit right. So
That's lovely.
I was finding portrait artists, uh, it required a whole different way of being,
Hmm.
because of someone's eyes or hair or anything else. It requires a delicacy and a precision and a commitment to truthful representation. So it can be very lovely to do it, but it required a different kind of way of being while I was doing it, where there was no gestural expression, for example, because I had to be very true and very careful. And in the end, I found the painstaking nature of portraiture wasn't suiting my being quite right.
Sure.
And when I did my first, because a neighbor invited me to go and stay in her cottage in Mayo for a week and paint. And I went there and I was surrounded by the Atlantic. It was at Downpatrick Head in Mayo. I went out the first morning, I'm walking and saying, how would I ever paint this? But I went home and I painted it. And I was trying knife work and strong marks and flowing marks. And it felt like I'd touched a magic wand.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
that knife in my hand and subject in my head, that the paint was being driven onto the canvas with a force that I hadn't been able to experience in the act of painting before. So I found in that subject that the subject that was about elemental forces and my own nature that likes going out and running. Like I was out this morning doing 5K at sunrise on Greystones Beach. I like being out there in the elemental forces, and the knife and the oil paint was strong and rich and powerful in the way you could deliver it. So all those matched.
You could definitely see that from your seascape. Like, it's very emotive and powerful, and even like my brother actually has two of your paintings in his sitting room, and yeah, and they're just so emotive. And every time I see them, they bring different emotions, and your work is truly stunning.
Well, it's a joy. I take joy in it. But you know what? You can never get complacent, because even now, every time I do a painting, I have to solve it. Every time I go up to it and I have to bring this to life. So you can never rehash the same painting. And even now in my Zoom classes, because I'm teaching on Wednesday and Thursday, and I actually do the same painting. I do it twice with each group, because I want to keep everybody consistent with where we're at and what we're doing. But I could never on Thursday do the same painting that I did the day before, even when I'm working for the same picture. That you have to be open to what's happening in front of you at that very moment and go with that. Well,
And do you ever find that you're not, what do you do if you're if you're putting yourself out there to getting some work or art done, and you're hitting a sort of a creative block, or does that happen with you? Do you sort of work through it? It does.
You know, it's live and I'm in the classroom, I actually tell the class, this isn't working.
Hey.
I'm going to stop. For example, last week I tried a different canvas that was rougher than the ones I'm using, that I normally use. Paint wasn't off the brush right, and I was just laboring at it in a way that, like, wanting it to stick, and it wasn't. So after about 20 minutes, I said to the class, can I ask you something? Would it be okay with everyone if I start again on a new canvas? And so they had to watch me twice.
I'm sure they didn't mind. I'm sure they didn't mind at all.
Yeah. And the other thing I realized was, because it's landscape and seascape, I'm more comfortable with seascape just because I'm so used to the environment, and, you know, almost with my eyes closed, I can kind of feel a rock or a water or a splash, whatever. But I was also wanting to offer them some seascape from the Wicklow Mountains, some landscape from the Wicklow Mountains. But I caught myself doing one of Loch Tay just a couple of weeks ago, where there was one portion of the picture that was very complex. There was fields, there was a path, there was a stream, there was light and shade, all in a small area. And I was getting smaller and smaller brushes and poking at it. And I realized that I'm not really enjoying doing this, because I'm poking at the painting instead of flowing with it. And I think I'm just going to wipe it off and do something else. You know?
Okay. So you don't let it get you down. You just find a solution to working through it.
And I take whatever that failure, if you call it that, teaches me, which is I really don't like working small scale. I don't like getting a small brush and poking at my painting. I much prefer to kind of do it straight off and then maybe tidy it up later if it needs. But first marks, this is another thing that I tell my class, because when I'm doing it, it looks terribly messy, going on just, you know, fling the paint on the canvas and move it around a bit. But what I tell them is that what you need to do is deliver to your canvas the...
Oh no, your sound just went there, Brenda, when you were about to reveal that piece of information. Are you back?
Am I?
Oh yeah, you're back. Yeah, I can hear you again. So when they approach their canvas.
Yeah, to deliver some, you know, assurance onto the canvas with your very first marks.
Okay.
So rather than drawing it carefully and then coloring in between the lines or anything, I tell them to use a big brush and block it in very loosely, let the paint run if it will. But in other words, you step up to your canvas and you have to own it. You have to, with those very, deliver a note of assurance and enjoy the process of what you're doing. And you can always tidy up later on, but it's very hard to loosen up later on if you've already got too tight. And I get so many people telling me, I really want to loosen up, but nobody has yet come and said, I need to tighten up.
Sure. I think some of the things that you say to your class, I use as a mantra in my everyday life. You know, don't worry about the process, just, you know, and then even just looking at something and going at it with gusto. And, you know, I feel like it's not just necessarily art that can be translated to, but I think that very much goes with your spirit and why people are so keen to join you every week in the classes and hear what you have to say, because it is, you know, it's a more holistic approach to, and it's a lovely kind of aura about you that people sort of want to see how you approach things.
Well, Lana, I just love being part of the community in the Schoolhouse for Art, because to me it's much more than showing people how to mix the right shade of green or, you know, paint a rock or whatever. It's really about how can you know what it is you want to say about your subject and how can I say that most strongly. And another mantra that I have with everybody, if they're nervous about, you know, it mightn't work or it's going to be awful, is I actually tell them to ask, who cares?
I mean, that's good.
And
it's a hard one to find an answer for, I guess.
And if they cannot name anybody who cares, then don't worry about it. Then just sort of, and be willing to throw it in the bin at the end of the day if it comes to it, but at least enjoy what you're doing in the meantime. And I also want to do a successful painting. Start by painting 100 unsuccessful ones, and that's how you'll get there.
Yeah.
So in a way, yeah, doing piano scales, if you're learning the piano, be prepared to just, it's the hours that you spend with the brush in your hand that get you to being able to do it. There isn't really a trick or a method or anything that's going to produce strong art other than hours and hours with a brush in your hand.
And
so be willing to put in.
Yeah, exactly. To be and yeah, I can see that from even behind you that you are creating art all the time. And is that something that you are doing? Like, have you found yourself doing more or less art during this last year? I know we've mainly continued teaching. You have anyway. You've continued teaching throughout, pretty much. So outside of that, do you find that the year has impacted you at all, or?
It's more in one way, Lana, because I'm teaching my 2 days a week in the Schoolhouse, I can get to my studio. It's actually right exactly at 5K from, but apart from that, as a teacher, I'm an essential worker. You gave me a letter to declare myself the Gardaí. I have been stopped twice going to the schoolhouse, my letter, but also the studio time is part of my teaching as well, because this is where I develop my own work and continue the work that I start in the classes and keep my materials and everything. So the studio time is essential to the teaching that I'm doing as well. They're not separate. But the peaceful way of being able to maybe get a bit more work done is because I'm not going shopping or lunch or
Yeah.
anything else. I'm walking, I'm running, and time at home and time in the studio and time teaching. Like for me, life is actually pretty good at the moment. I'm not missing much. We get to chat to our family like this
Mm-hmm.
online. You know, great that we're able to do that, but we're not able
Mm.
to see much at all this past year. But we stay connected. And what I do love with our groups in the classroom is that it's been a year since we, you know, had to and go home with the first lockdown last March. And we stayed in touch by, I was doing a video on Facebook Live every week for them to tune into. And we set up a WhatsApp group so that we'd all stay talking. But that group has become like the best support group ever.
Yeah.
For me too, because we chat, we put our paintings up. Everybody says, "Oh, that's lovely," to each other. So we've all been able to stay connected to each other and to our art practice. So it's not just about me with each student, it's about them also as a community of artists. That's really been just lovely, and I love being part of it. So I can see that going on. Even when we're back in the classroom, we just have set up a really lovely connection
There's a
there.
lovely group. And are you working on any particular piece at the moment? Are you there's
Um,
some lovely work behind you.
yeah, I can maybe walk back and show you. I'll leave the piece where it is. Most I'm working on the large scale. You can see this here. So this is
Right.
one. Here's over. You know, just a big wave. And mostly the demos. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The demos I do are small because I want to be able to do them in the space of a class. So that's the one that we just did this last week.
Beautiful.
I've just finished here. Um, this is the one that didn't work that I told them I'd have to stop. It was of Lochte, but I was getting all into knots trying to do the little bits of stuff happening there. I just wiped them out in the end.
And how do you know when, is it a sort of aesthetic feeling, like that when you're looking at a painting, you know aesthetically that's finished, leave it alone, don't touch it? Or do you find that process of saying it's done difficult?
Very hard.
Yeah, I believe it's like a lot of artists would say that it's hard not to just keep touching up.
Sure, and I rely on somebody else. My husband, Michael, is my a second pair of eyes. So I need him to walk into the studio and he'll either go, "Oh, wow," or he'll go, "Oh, what have you done?"
Oh no.
What now? So, and he's able to tell me, "Step away and put down your brush when the
And
time."
you trust him. You trust him to say that. Do you ever say no, this definitely isn't finished, or you just trust him completely that he knows?
Usually he's right. And
Okay.
if I for a bit, I can recognize there's nothing more that needs to be done to this. And there's a very fine line. You run a great risk of going from being just right with maybe some passages that might be a bit not defined to being overworked and,
Okay.
you know, too labored. And another of my tips for my class is that your art carries the mark of your energy at the time you're creating it. So if you're flowing and assured and relaxed, then someone looking at your painting will feel assured and relaxed too. While if you're tense and you're hacking at it and picking at it and
And
thinking,
overthinking.
yeah, and over laboring it, you look at a painting and you feel kind of tense for some reason because the marks were delivered with tension.
So it'll be like you're almost a fortune teller or a psychiatrist when you're in the classroom, that they're holding up their work and they're like, is there something else going on at home? Or
But also, like, we've taken the nature of the class has changed since we went into Zoom. Normally in the class is working on a subject of your own choice. And do a demo anyway, but people then go to their own space and will work on their own art. What we've all somehow spontaneously taken to doing in Zoom is that they're painting alone. So
yeah.
everybody's painting with me. So I actually do like about 20 minutes work, then I pause and give them time to catch up. Then or we kind of in, as a group anyway. But then as they finish them during the week, we post them to each other on WhatsApp, or we're starting to put them now into the new classroom that we've got going. Even though we've all got the same subject and they've all been following the way I did it and working from my reference photo, they're all different.
Wow.
Some way you cannot hold back delivering your, and I think your painting is as much about you as it is about it, whatever it is that you're painting. It's about,
Lovely.
I've got some just lovely artists that always end up, some with really like Van Gogh like swirling big strong marks, and others are really controlled and observing well and delicate and just a delicate touch. So in some way you bring the mark of your own being to whatever. What I ask everybody to do is find the subject that makes you stop in your own tracks and say, I want to hold on to this.
Gorgeous.
With visual term. So, and I've been through many subjects, but I've found in the seascapes, I just found something. I think because the subject isn't just like a postcard of a nice place, it's about the energy of elemental forces and wanting to in some way translate those forces into paint and in expression on a surface. So find your subject that makes your own heart stop for a minute, that you say, it could be the daffodils outside your window right now, it could be your dog, it could be a portrait of somebody, it could be an abstract idea in your head, but that, it's like that holy grail. What is it that makes you want to be an artist? Find that, and then if you find that perfect combination where you've got the nature of the artist and the nature of the subject and the materials that you have available to express that with coming together in a really nice way, then, you know.
You've got something good.
Yeah.
And is there something about oils that has, you said that you started with watercolor and you've sort of progressed through the years with different mediums. Is there something about oils that you enjoy more than other mediums that you've tried in the past?
I think because it's tactile, Lana, it's but juicy, it blends, but it's strong, makes it strong. With watercolor, you have to be so delicate, and I admire so much the artists like Yanni Petters that have just the most delicate touch to be able to render something so, so beautifully. And but I recognize in my nature, but I don't have the patience to paint like that.
Okay.
I like to charge in and make big gestural marks and kind of dance with it a little bit. So the oils are so much more forgiving for me than acrylics. I did paint in acrylics for a few years. We lived in France for 4 years, and I was part of an acrylic group there. I found limitations that frustrated me because it dried so fast. I couldn't blend my edges or soften things or keep it moving on the surface for long enough. So I just really, really like oils. However, I also choose the medium according to what I'm doing. For example,
Mm.
I've been on travel sketching holidays for a few years. We've gone to France, Italy, and Croatia for a week with sketchbooks. I'm not,
Okay.
and I use sketchbook with watercolor and pen because I'm not willing to carry around my easel and my oil paints. And fun. So I adjust the materials. You know, I choose materials based on the need of the day. But mostly it's just for traveling that I will still use watercolors. I like oils otherwise.
Yeah, it sounds like everything sort of fits together like a jigsaw so that your creative process can happen. That you have your subject matter is something that you're passionate about and it draws energy from you. And then your medium is something that helps you facilitate that, and even how you use it in the size of your canvas.
Yeah.
Um, and do
Well,
you take photographs of your work, or do you work plein air or from your memory, or?
I don't work plein air often enough, largely because I'm a fair weather painter.
And you don't
I'm
get much of that here.
out in all weathers and holds down the easel with a big rock or something. And there are many artists I admire so much that do that. They're like the year-round sea swimmers or something. But I have all my photos are taken with my iPhone, so I have that with me all the time. So a lot of my subjects, like one I did just 2 weeks ago, I think, with the class, I'll show you. This was sunrise in Greystones,
No.
because I'd been out that morning and taking a photograph. So rely on to provide my material.
Lovely.
And I
Thanks, Brenda.
don't, need to go out very far. I got
Yeah,
everything.
it's at
Space.
your doorstep. I love it. Brenda, you're so good to talk to me. I think we did, I think our Instagram live, our first little attempt was good. I could actually talk to you all day. Your background and how you've gotten to where you are today is so interesting. So I'm definitely going to try and rob another half an hour of your time to have a
It
chat
is,
in the future again.
it's been lovely talking to you, and such the indulgence of being told, go and talk about yourself for an hour.
Oh, it's lovely. Your story's amazing. But it's not, you don't even talk about yourself. You give such inspiration, even just on a creative and spiritual level. I think it's lovely. I always
So
feel very calm when I'm chatting to you.
that's lovely. I have to calm myself often, but that's really nice. Lan, it's been lovely talking.
You too. Have a lovely day, Brenda. I'm sure I'll be chatting to you later on. But thanks to everybody who joined our little chat today. And it'll be on our grid anyway afterwards if anybody's watching it back. And Brenda, thanks a million.
Okay,
Have a great
Lana.
day.
Bye.
Bye. Bye bye.